So now getting to the subject at hand, should we destroy the world or destory it? So what comes to my mind when I think about that question is that when we seem to be on a path of destruction. I don't know if you remember that song from back in the day, like self-destruction. We're headed for self-destruction. Well, it feels like that's where we're headed. If the question is why. Now, I have had the interesting privilege of being around a lot of people who have destroyed their lives. Largely, they destroyed their lives by making choices, whether it was really bad relationships that put them in terrible situations, or whether it was like drugs. I've had a lot of friends that were like really addicted to drugs pretty badly, and family members. And then people who have been addicted to religion in a very toxic way, that they basically were destroying their lives over religion. I remember before my mom converted to Judaism, sometimes she would give away the money that we had to pay bills, thinking that she was going to give it to the church. It was going to multiply. And then we'd be able to pay more bills, but we were like maybe $100 short of paying our bills, and she would give it to church, and then we would have none of the money, and then we would have our lights turned off, and I'd be like, "Dude, this doesn't work." So even religion could be toxic, right? It could be a way of destroying one's life. But the question is, why would we destroy our lives? Why would we be bent on destroying ourselves? The only answer I could come up with is we don't feel worthy of the life that we have. That for some reason or the other, we bought into a story that told us we were unworthy of the life we had. So even while living this life, and even while trying to do things to either make one's life better or trying to distract oneself from the shame or the guilt or whatever it is that we feel, we simultaneously want to destroy ourselves. Hence, people being on drugs, or people going to religion and abdicating all of their consciousness to some fool. All of these things we do because we don't think we're worthy of the life that we have. That's my assumption. So, working with that assumption, we go on this path of self destruction. So, when we look at this country, we are on a path of self destruction. Now, some of the reasons why people, I think, go on this path of self destruction, besides the narrative that they're not worthy, is they might have done something harmful out of whatever shame, guilt, or trying to survive, that they can't deal with the burden of what they've done. So they can't allow themselves to be healed, or allow themselves to live a more conscious life. So, like, I had a friend who was really bad on drugs, and she told me, and I actually went through her whole detox situation with her and everything. And one of the things she said to me was that when she was off drugs, she would remember the things she did when she was on drugs. So then she would feel so terrible that she would need drugs to make herself not feel so bad, which would then dig her into a deeper hole until she got off, right? And she had to go through a dark place to do that. Well, no doubt, anyone who knows anything about a history knows that everything you've seen in the Epstein files is what America has always done since America's founding. It has always abused people, innocent people, raped and pillaged, or graped, I guess is what people say, so they won't get tagged in videos, and been harmful. And been PDFs, because even PDF files, as they also say, to avoid getting tagged in these videos. Because even if you think about the lying story of Pocahontas, where they tried to romanticize with Disney, Pocahontas was like 10 or 11 years old, and John Smith, and that Rolf dude that she ended up with, they were way older than her. They exploited her, abused her, got her to screw her family over because she was sex trafficked. And then they took her to England, and she got sick and died like 21. Yeah, Disney made a movie that made it seem like they were all one with nature and everybody was happy and there was some romance going on there. And they even made two movies about that crap. But the reality was, she was an abused young woman who was sex trafficked and all sorts of other stuff like that, and it led to a lot of destruction. We've just been that. That's what we've been. And so we try to tell ourselves this other story while simultaneously knowing what we've actually been. And so we need something to, like, destroy ourselves because of the shame and the guilt that we feel collectively. And it's pervasive everywhere that you go. It sucks. It's gross. And I have been exposed to enough people and enough experiences and had enough conversations with all types of people, from a satanic white supremacist to Black Hebrew Israelites, who got into an argument with me when I was doing a book signing a bunch of years ago. I've been with all kinds of people. I was raised by poor Black people, poor white people, and immigrants. in partially in Mississippi. I've been exposed to this stuff, and I've had these deep conversations ever since I was a little kid. My mom converted to Judaism. My aunt converted to Islam. My uncle is a Roshi. So I've been, and I was a fundamentalist Christian trying to figure out how to reconcile my relationships with these people because my grandma was raising me to think that all of them were going to hell. So it's a weird mix of things that I've experienced. And when I look at it, it's all these tendencies to destroy ourselves because we want the story to start over again. That's where this is leading. We want to start the story over again, but we don't know how to stop and then start again. We think we have to destroy it, and it's unconscious. We're doing something that's called repetition compulsion, where we know there's harms that have been created, but we don't 100% understand it from a place of consciousness. So we keep repeating it so that we can learn about what it is that we've done, and then we can start over again. But the only problem is that the more you do this thing to try to understand this thing, the deeper the hole, the more you need distraction or some kind of drug, which in America, our drug would be capitalism, right? If we have like a big GDP, then we think that absolves us of all of the harm and the things that we've done. This is collectively, right? So what do? Do we just stay on this path to self-destruction and just be like, okay, if we destroy everything and we destroy stories and we destroy all this other stuff, then we can start over again? And a lot of these unconscious people don't realize that they're going towards their self-destruction, but they really are. Or can we come from a place of consciousness and de-story our world, and then from a place of consciousness redeem those things that we've done and then create better story? That's the option I would take. But again, that's just me. But the question is, why do we not have choice? Many of us, unfortunately, don't have choice. And I'm going to tell you a very like insane story that I have long not wanted to tell people. And it's not that big a deal. But if you're like a woo-woo spiritual person, it probably doesn't mean anything to you. But from the space that I came from, it felt like a strange experience. So back when I was like just coming out of fundamentalist Christianity, but I didn't know what I was, and then I had all these conversations with people, and people told me they thought I was Buddhist, and they didn't even realize I was a Christian. Blah 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 blah. I one day was meditating, and like just meditating on a long ass lunch break when I was learning Chinese at this language school in California. We used to have a 3 hour lunch break because we were learning Chinese all day. So I was on my lunch break, uh, meditated, and then I had this weird experience where I forgot to set my alarm, and I was like, I somehow saw the clock and said, "Oh shoot, I got to go back to class. It's almost time to go back to class, right?" But then I noticed that I looked up and saw the mirror on my car and could see myself with my eyes closed, laid to the side. And I said, "What the heck? How am I seeing the clock and seeing myself sleep while I'm sitting in the car?" So I had some kind of weird out of body experience. Then I was, whoa, I snapped out of it, looked at the clock. It was the time that I saw. And then I just started going to class. On my way to class, I encountered this dude. And he was in my class. I can't remember his name right now, but he saw me and he just goes, "Hey, Pedro, I see you." And at the time, I didn't know what he meant. So I said, "Yeah, I see you too." And he was like, "No, I see you." And then I was just like, okay. And I knew that I felt this weird feeling over me that was still lingering from the meditation. And I was like, is he saying something like, spiritual woo? I don't really know. Cause I hadn't had conversations with people about like this space that I was leaning into after leaving the evangelical church. So I didn't really want to get into anything. So I was just kind of like, okay. And then he just said, "You can't help them." And I said, "Help who?" And he said, "The humans." And I was like, "Huh? What?" And he was like, "You can't help the humans." And he's like, "They can't help themselves." And I feel gross saying this. He said, "We are here to control them." And I said, "Who's here to control them?" And he said, "People like me and you." And I was like, "What?" And then he said, "This is so terrible. I can't believe I'm about to say this on the video." He said, "We're the Hitlers of the world." I said, "Bro, I ain't a Hitler of the world. You're a Hitler of the world. What the F are you talking about?" And he said people can't control themselves, and those of us who can control ourselves are supposed to control the people who can't control themselves. And then he said, "Why do you think I have a penthouse on the beach, a sports car, and I can be with a different woman every night?" And I said, "Because you're evil." And then he said, and I even asked this fool because I still was kind of fundamentalist, so I asked him if he was an antichrist, and he started laughing and said, "Not quite." And then he basically said, "A lot of people can't control themselves, and those of us who can manipulate the people who can't." And I was like, "Yo, this is gross." And I actually wrote a book. I don't know if it's on my bookshelf. I can't see it right now. Anyway, I had this book. I wrote this book called "It's All in Me." And the book was designed to help people snap out of it. And it talked about the three choices that we have as beings. But I wrote it in poetry because I was trying to be sneaky when I wrote it. So it says the idea is that we can be a man, which is human, but I was trying to do alliteration. This includes all beings, but man, monster, or miracle. The man or the human is someone who wakes up to the reality of who they are and sees that a lot of this stuff is BS. And you just live your life consciously. The monster is the person who wakes up and goes, "Oh, snap. I can see how easily systems and things are manipulatable. Now I'm going to do what that MF did and try to control people." And then the miracle is the person who says, "I woke up to this and now I'm going to do my best to try to wake other people up." And that's the final choice. So you can be a man, a monster, or a miracle. And so my choice was to try to be just a man. I didn't want to be a miracle, and I definitely didn't want to be a monster. So I just try to like live my life as chill as I could and not be a part of the mess and not add to the mess. But I wasn't trying to change anything because the thing is, and any of you who have ever tried to help somebody who doesn't want to be helped, is if you try to help somebody that doesn't want to be helped, they attack you. They turn on you and say, "Oh, you'll point out something to them that is not working in their life," and instead of going, "Oh yeah, you're right, that's not working in my life," they go, "Oh, you hate me, you this, you're that, and it was like going crazy. It started losing their freaking minds. Let me see what Black Expat said. Capitalism equals greed. Greed is our addiction for sure, 100%. Consumerism and materialism are rampant as a part of the addiction that we have. Yep. Consuming less is actually countercultural. Absolutely. You are preaching the truth today, sir. Hallelujah. I actually wrote a piece a long time ago called More Addiction, and it meant that we're addicted to more. I'm kind of breaking off a tangent. I'll come back, but I wrote this. It was about we're addicted to more. And actually, I did a workshop one time, and I asked the people, "What is better, 10 or 100?" They said 100. I didn't even tell them what I was talking about. I said, "So 100 is better than 10?" And then they were like, "Yeah, yeah, absolutely." And I said, "What if I meant bees up your rectum?" And they were like, "What?" And I said, "What's better now, 100 bees up your rectum or 10?" They were like, 10. And I said, "So you want 10 bees in your rectum?" And they were like, "No, my God, no, 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 no." And I said, "Listen to you though. Pay attention to what you just did. I asked you what's better, 100 or 10. You automatically assumed that 100 is better than 10 with no context, no idea. Your brain automatically thinks whatever it is, more is better. And we are addicted to that. And that is the ultimate addiction because we feel like less. So since we feel like less, we always need more. But if you know who the F you are, you don't need more because nothing can be added to you or taken away from you for the fullness of who you truly are as a being that's basically an expression of infinite consciousness, right? But I don't feel like going down that whole line. Basically, going back to the man monster miracle thing, I never really wanted to be like any kind of like helper teacher person, and I actually tried to do everything that I could to avoid it, but then I would find myself in instances where I might do it here or there, blah 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 blah. But it wasn't really like a thing I wanted to do. I just wanted to live like a simple life without drama because I grew up with so much drama. I just wanted a simple life, but simple life did not want to be had by me for some reason. And so I found myself in these instances where I'm a type 8 on the Enneagram, which is a protector, or also called the protector. Sometimes people call it the boss, which I don't like, and challenger. And that challenger and protector energy gets me sometimes where it pulls me outside of myself and outside of my intention to just chill and to just be balanced. And I end up feeling like I got to help somebody that I don't want to. So I try to avoid the situation, but if it shows up, I can't stop myself. Blah, blah, blah. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody. The point is, that pulls it out of me, but I still can look at the whole frame and say we can be a man, a monster, a miracle. But if you're trying to be a miracle, you're going to realize that a lot of times you're going to get a lot of grief and a lot of people that are going to be upset with you because you're disrupting their story. To bring it back to, should we destroy the world, or should we destroy the world? Because a lot of people, they just feel like they have to finish the story that was given to them. So when they come into the world and they get told who they are, what they're capable of, then they just want to keep riding that story till its end, until it's over. And they don't, it doesn't matter if the story harms or hurts them or whatever the case may be. I've seen people fight for their oppression just as much as I've seen people fight to oppress. You know what I mean? Like I said, I talked to this like white supremacist Satanist dude who told me a lot of crazy stuff that I think I talked about in the past, and I may talk about it again in the future. But he told me something, and he was like, "Yo, I'm above you." Like he straight up had no problem telling me that I was beneath him or everything. But it was like a kind of weirdly civil conversation that was also quite insane. I won't get into it, but the point is that his story was white was better, and he chose to be a Satanist because he said he tried to fight sin and sin kept winning. So he figured he might as well be on the winning team, and so he decided to go and league with Satan. Some crazy crap. But at any rate, that was his narrative, and he decided, I'm gonna ride this narrative. And many of us do that. We don't realize that we can change the story, that we can actually be authors of the story, we can be editors of the story. We can say this story sucks, I'm gonna start a new story. I don't want to participate in this stupid story anymore. But most of us don't realize that we can do that. And a lot of times the reason why we continue the narratives is because of our connection to our family of origin who told us these effed up stories in the first place. And so we don't want to betray our families of origin by being more than what they say we can be, or by seeing other people as more than what we've been told they were. Because like in the American system, obviously we try to ignore indigenous people altogether and make black people the worst, because it makes the people who benefited from the system of oppression feel like they're okay. And they can't be okay because the system is jacked up and built on death, murder, and grapes and PDF files and all the other crap that we are seeing today. Has never not been that way in this country. It's always been this way, always. And any illusion that has been otherwise is just because a person's been insulated from it, because the system was designed to keep them from seeing that. And now it's all spilling out, and people don't know what to do. To like, how did we get this way? Well, we always been this way. But if that's hard for you to accept, just accept that we're this way now. You don't have to go all the way back and live the stuff that people like me have lived and stuff like that. Just look at it now and ask yourself, do you want it to keep going like this? And if you don't want to keep going like this, then there's two options: destroy or destory. I say de-story, because then you can just clean some stuff, you can edit it, you can do a bunch of refinements, and we can make something better. However, if we don't de-story it intentionally, look at the stories that are telling us these negative things about ourselves. Look at these stories that are telling us negative things about other people. Look at these stories of our like benevolence, when we know that that is not compatible with reality. And we can become that way, but in order to become that way, we have to acknowledge where we have been. And not that we got to wallow on it if that's going to hurt you and make you less effective, but we definitely have to acknowledge it and then de-story it, or de-story some of these institutions, de-story some of these systems, and create better stories together. Unfortunately, a lot of us who are fighting these stories are also making these stories more rooted in our efforts to fight it, because we aren't creating better stories. That's why I love artists. We need artists like a mug, because what artists do, and this is a framework that I also created. I created this framework called ARTS, but I'm not going to get into that whole thing right now. But what I will say is the premise of it is that artists turn chaos into culture. And I'll say that again: artists turn chaos into culture. So when artists see something that is, you know, a nebulous mess, or something that's like destructive or whatever case may be, an artist is able to take it into themselves, alchemize it, and bring it out into the world again in a new fashion that can actually bring life about. So like when people create movies or stories or poetry or all these things, they are actually transforming or alchemically transforming this chaos into culture. And all of us are artists at heart. We're all coming to the world this way. And then somebody tells us we got to make money and artists don't make money or whatever they tell us, and we abandon that creative, imaginative part of who we are, which is probably the biggest part of who we are. That's why Einstein said imagination is more important than knowledge, because with knowledge you're limited to what you know, and that's the construct that people think they know how things are, and so they can't imagine anything better, and so they just keep working and messing around with the crap that they think they know. Whereas if you have an imaginative capacity and you increase your imaginative capacity, you can look at things as they are and then wonder what they can be or what they can become. And then you can create new things. So we have to build up our imaginative capacity, and the artists are the people who help us do that. That's part of the reason why I started doing stand-up comedy, because I started getting like all angry and shit because of the world. And then but I also knew that the alchemical process of comedy is tragedy plus time. And so I started to ask myself, how could I take this energy that kind of appears as tragic and chaotic, and then collapse time in a way that I can lighten it and make people look at some of the ridiculous things that we are participating in, and then laugh. And laughter, what that does is it actually releases your breath. Laughter is stuck breath coming out of your body. And a lot of us have stuck breath all over our body because these stories that we tell ourselves make us brace and lock up and restrict our breath. Just like if you get scared and you watch a scary movie, right? You go, like if your life has been composed of terrible narratives, then you have stuck breath all over your body. It's a reason why most comedians tend to be Jewish or black, is because of the stuff that they've been through, and they need that alchemical process of taking that tragedy, collapse in time, and releasing it in an artistic way to help people breathe again, because that breath is our life. And when you use that comedy, that's another way of de-storying, of kind of decentering the people who are in the story, and make especially the oppressive folks, and then break it all up so that we can create a new story or laugh at the old story. We need all these things in order to create new possibilities, or we can destroy everything. So I don't know if I beat this dead horse too much. I would love to hear from some of you who are up here now if there's other things that from what I'm saying, that you want me to tap into, or if this is good. Because I'm not like, this is not scripted at all. I literally just woke up with, should we destroy the world or de-story it? Instead, let me get in front of this camera and just say crap and see what comes out. And then I'll learn as I speak, and hopefully it'll edify some other folks. So, not seeing any comments or anything right now, I'm going to start to wind down. So, if I were just to use my own life as an example, as I said before, I was raised a fundamentalist Christian who basically ate, focused on the family for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and washed it down with a nice cup of the 700 Club, because that's how my grandma was. So, she just raised me that way. And that was my story. And my other part of my story is my grandma told me I was the only one of her grandkids that she was going to see in heaven, because my other family was Muslim, and some of the other ones just were doing whatever the heck they wanted to do. So she was like, "Yo, it's just me and you gonna be in heaven, baby, unless we can save them." So that was the context that I was raised in, and I loved my grandma, and she was like my safe place. So I tried to go along with what my grandma was sharing with me. And also, I grew up in the hood, and I used to get bullied and beat up and stuff. So I thought I was gonna get killed. So, and that was a very real expectation for me. And so I thought I was gonna die before I was 18 years old. And so my goal was, don't die in a way that would embarrass your grandma. And so I came super Christian, reading Bibles all the time, studying, so I could, be in heaven with my grandma or meet her, because I thought I was going to die before her. And then just like live whatever kind of clean life as much as possible. But I kept living, and I kept meeting people, and I kept having experiences. And every time it would feel like it was destroying my life, because I would learn these things that didn't match what I was being told. But what it really was, it was destoriing my life. And then after it destoried it, I was able to build on it and create better stories with the new information I had. So my whole life has been a constant dance with destruction and destroying and destroying. And sometimes you do actually need to destroy some things in order to destory it. And it's important to be able to know the difference, because there's sometimes that actually destroying it is the best thing, but sometimes it's not. And being able to discern the difference is the gift that I'm trying to offer to some people who are interested in that sort of thing. Like the story that Harriet Tubman had was, you're a slave, this is what you're, the life that you have, and this you're supposed to deal with. And then she actually got hit in the head with something. They had like these epileptic episodes and dreams and stuff, but she attributed it to some kind of spiritual awareness, and she was able to reframe, which is another way of destorium, her experience and desire something that she was told was never meant for her, which was freedom. So she destroyed that old story of that her life was just to be a slave. She destoried and then restoried or restored herself and decided that she was going to live from this place of consciousness, of freedom, of liberation. And she became free before she ever left. And then she walked in that freedom to a new place and was able to avoid getting captured. But not only that, when she mastered it, she was able to go back to those same places and take other people out and take them back. And you definitely should study her life because it really, really paints a picture of what I'm trying to talk about. She is the perfect example of a person who mastered the awareness of destroying, destorying, restoring, all those things, and taking other people with her. So I aspire to be more like her now. There was a time where I would have been just like, I'm free, screw everybody. But I obviously can't do that. So I'm not doing that. I'm trying to do something. I don't know what it is, but I'm trying to stay in my integrity and share what I've learned and share what I've encountered. And a large reason why I'm saying a lot of stuff that I'm saying now is because I was raised on a lot of the crazy stuff that's on the forefront of our world right now. And a lot of people who I know who are also raised with it, they either escaped it, hate it, and don't want to have anything to do with it, or don't want to be a part of the conversation at all. They either, or they still believe it, or they never knew this kind of toxic Christianity stuff. And so they can't relate. And so I feel some kind of responsibility of having navigated all of this stuff, been pushed out of a lot of that things, not on purpose. I wasn't trying to get pushed out. I just did and got pushed out and learned how to articulate myself over time by writing and practicing. And so I'm just kind of putting stuff out there. This is clearly unpolished. It's more of a stream of consciousness, but the whole invitation of it is for you to know that you have choice, that you have choice. If you don't like the story that you're living right now and the way that it's going, then you don't owe it to anybody to keep going on the story. You can, like, metaphorically speaking, walk out of the movie theater and say, this movie sucks, I'm gonna go see something else. And you have that capacity, you have that possibility. Within you is the greatest artist that there is your imaginative capacity. And you still have it. It hasn't gone anywhere. The only thing is you've been told stories that say that you don't have this capacity, but you really do have this capacity. And right now, maybe if you don't like the way your life is going, you don't like the way the world's going, you don't like all these other things, maybe the imagination that you have, you're using it to imagine the same shit over and over and over again. And these conversations or whatever it is I'm putting out here is an invitation to imagine differently. And it doesn't have to be big things. It could be, you could start with small things and then build from there. You can start with a meal and just say, hey, I always eat this. Let me eat food from a culture I've never eaten food from and imagine like my world from that perspective. There's so many things you can do to build your imaginative capacity. And then as you do it, realize that you can do that anywhere and everywhere at will. It's your choice. But when you do, and you start to wake up to all these different things, you will have monsters that will try to stop you because they love manipulating and treating people like trash. And you will have the people who are still stuck who will be pulling at you because they'll think you're abandoning them. And so they will try to stop you because they think that that's love. And they'll try to stop you from going out into the world. Like, just like when people try to escape slavery, they're like, don't do it. You're going to get killed. But if you choose freedom, you're not going to give a crap because you'd rather be dead than to be enslaved. It's like that old song. I was going to sing it, but I ain't going to sing it. But at any rate, you know what I mean. So thank you for being here. I think I'm pretty much done. I can't feel anything else coming out. Um, I'm trying to sense it, but for those of you who've been here, I appreciate you. For those of you who'll see it later, I appreciate you. For those of you who are going to see clips of this and then tell me that I'm a whatever you want to tell me about myself, like the people told me yesterday, I also appreciate you because some of your jokes that you say about me are actually kind of funny. they're not true, but they're funny. And I know that the only reason you're defending this broken system is because you either benefited from it or you're so afraid of its collapse because you don't think you'll survive its collapse that you'll uphold the same system that oppresses you just because you think that that's your safety, because you think there's safety in knowing uh, what the deal is, even if the deal is horrible. And you probably believe the illusion of safety in numbers. And you think if a lot of people believe something, then that brings safety to you. It actually doesn't. It just means a bunch of y'all get destroyed together. So, at any rate, hopefully this made some sense to some people. Hopefully the algorithm will pull some clips that are coherent. And I appreciate y'all. Thanks for being spiritual abolitionists or going in that direction. And it seemed like everybody stuck around, so I appreciate you. And until the next inspiration hits, peace.